In the first part of this episode, I said be careful what you wish for. If the campaign gets its European VAT comparison and the government says final, it's match employer national insurance too, you get a mixed answer. Some countries would cost UK employers more, and a couple would cost them less. But here's the thing, VAT and employer NI aren't only two numbers on the page. If we're actually doing this properly, if we're asking what would it really cost to run a salon business in the UK versus France versus Ireland versus the Netherlands, then there are two more numbers that matter just as much. What the business pays in its profits and what is required to put into staff's pensions. So the second part of the episode finishes the job. Corporation tax, employer pension contributions, the whole bill, not just the employment half of it. And there's one finding in here that surprised me more than anything in all the other episodes in this series combined. So in the last episode we focused on the minimum wage. The UK sits second in Europe behind only Luxembourg. On employer national insurance it's genuinely mixed. Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium would cost more if matched. France's scary 42 to 45% headline doesn't actually apply anywhere near the minimum wage, and Ireland, the campaign's own favourite country, would actually cost less. So that's the employment side of running a business. This episode is the other side, what the business itself pays in its profits and what it's on the hook for beyond wages. So let's start with a number that most salon owners would never think to compare internationally because it doesn't come up in the VAT campaign at all. What the business pays and what it keeps. So the UK runs a two-tier system. Profits under £50,000 pay a small profits rate of 19%. Profits over £250,000 pay the main rate of 25% with a sliding scale in between. Most small salons running modest profits are going to sit at or near the 19% small profits rate. So if you line that up against the campaign's usual comparators, Germany, corporation tax plus the local trade tax combines to around 30%, with no equivalent small business relief. Or that I could confirm anyway. So a small German business pays roughly the same rate as a large one. The Netherlands is 19% of the first €200,000 of profit, 25.8% above. And a lower band that's actually more generous in absolute terms than the UK, since €200,000 is roughly 4 times the UK's £50,000 threshold. Belgium's 20% on the first €100,000 for qualifying SMEs and 25% above. Ireland, the famous 12.5% flat regardless of size, still the outlier that everyone knows about. And then there's France, which had a twist inside the twist. France's headline rate is 25%, but, and this genuinely surprised me when I checked it, French SMEs get a reduced rate of just 15% of their first €42,500 of profit, and there's a proposal in this year's finance bill to raise that threshold to €100,000, 15%, lower than the UK's small profits rate, on a threshold that would cover most small salons' entire annual profit. So in corporation tax specifically, the honest picture is the UK is competitive, not dominant. It's roughly in the same tier as the Netherlands and Belgium for small businesses. Excuse me. It's meaningfully better than Germany, and it's actually a bit worse than France's small business rate and a lot worse than Ireland's flat rate. The two countries that get cited constantly for having punishment tax environment on other measures. Now the pensions number, and this is the one I want to spend real time on because it's the biggest single thing missing from every Europe does it better comparison I've come across in building this series. The UK's auto enrolment minimum is 3% of qualifying earnings and only on the band between $6,240 and $50,270 a year, not the whole salary. It's a small, narrow, well-known cost. Every UK payroll provider budgets for it as a matter of course. Now, if you go to the Netherlands, roughly 70-80% of Dutch employees are covered by the mandatory sector-wide pension funds. Industries where, if you operate in that sector, participation isn't optional, it's required by law. Hospitality is explicitly one of the sectors this applies to where it applies. The employer typically pays around 2/3 of the total contribution, and the industry guidance puts employers' share at somewhere between 15 and 25% of pensionable salary. 15 to 25%. Not on top of a small band like the UK's 6,240 to 50,270 slice, on the pensionable salary generally. Add that to the roughly 23 to 24% the Netherlands already pays in ordinary employer social contributions, and you get a country that could be paying close to or even past France's scariest headline number. And it's never mentioned because everybody's looking at France. And I want to flag precisely what I haven't nailed down here. I don't have the exact mandatory pension rate for whichever specific Dutch sector the Dutch sector fund a hairdressing salon would actually fall under. It depends on the collective agreement that applies, and I haven't managed to trace that down to a hairdressing specific figure. So I'm giving you the general range that applies across the mandatory system, not a confirmed hairdressing specific number. I will try and find that. It's a gap that we need to find. And then Ireland one more time, because it has its own twist here too. Ireland only just introduced mandatory pension auto-enrolment at all. It launched on the 1st of January this year, branded My Future Fund. Right now in year one, the employer contribution is just 1.5%, even lower than the UK's 3%. It's set to rise in stages to 6% by 2035. So today Ireland is cheaper than the UK in pensions too. In 9 years it will be double the UK's rate. Both of these things are true, and which one you quote depends entirely on which year you're talking about, which is exactly the kind of thing that needs stating plainly rather than picking whichever number suits the argument. So here's the natural next question, and I want to handle it carefully because this is exactly the point where a comparison like this can go wrong. You cannot just add VAT plus employer NI plus corporation tax plus pension contributions into one combined percentage. They're not measured against the same thing. VAT is a percentage of the price the customer pays. Employer NI and pension contributions are a percentage of the wage bill. Corporation tax is a percentage of the profit after everything else has been paid. Treating those four numbers as four numbers you can sum is the same mistake. The flatline headline without context mistake. This whole series, we've spent 5 episodes catching up other people making those mistakes. I'm not going to do it just because it would make a tidier ending. What I can say honestly is the shape of it. Country by country, for a business roughly the size and structure of a typical salon, the UK, middling to competitive VAT rate, flat 15% employer NI with no minimum wage taper, genuinely competitive 19% small business corporation tax rate, and a small, well-contained pension obligation. Ireland, the VAT precedent everyone talks about, but also lower employer NI, a flat and famously low corporation tax rate, and for now the lowest pension cost of the lot. France, a terrifying corporation tax and employer NI headline that mostly doesn't apply to small business at or near the minimum wage, and a genuinely generous small business tax rate underneath it. The Netherlands is solid but unremarkable in VAT and corporation tax until you hit the pension system, which may be the single largest hidden cost in this whole comparison. It's not a single number, it's not meant to be, it's 4 separate, genuinely different pictures, and the UK is uncompetitive with Europe turns out to be true for exactly none of those 4 countries in exactly the same way. So again, I'll say it every episode, none of this means that the underlying pressure on the salon industry isn't real, and I've never said anything else beyond that. And none of it means that the UK is secretly a low tax paradise for small salons either. The wage price gap from episode 1 hasn't moved. Salon owners' costs are still rising faster than their prices. And 4 episodes of European tax comparisons doesn't change that arithmetic one bit. What this pair of episodes means is narrower and more useful than either the UK is hard done by or the UK has nothing to complain about. It means whichever country you pick as your comparison, you have to look at the whole picture. VAT, employer NI, corporation tax and pensions together before you can honestly say whether that country treats small employers better or worse than the UK does. Pick just one number and you can make almost any country look like the villain or the model student. France looks terrifying on employer NI and generous in small business tax. The Netherlands looks unremarkable until its pension system shows up. Ireland looks like the dream today, but much less generous in 2035. That's a claim about how you read the evidence properly. It's not a claim that any one country, including the UK, has it easy. So now we've got part one of the episodes took apart employer NI comparison. This half adds the two pieces, corporation tax and pensions, that nobody in any of the campaigns have raised at all on either side. And if there's a single through line across all 6 episodes, it's this. Every time a flat single number gets held up as proof of anything, it turns out to be missing at least one thing that changes the answer. So the full picture in 6 episodes: minimum wage, UK near the top, not catching up. Employer NI, genuinely mixed, depends which country. Corporation tax, the UK is competitive, they're not the cheapest. And France's small business rate quietly undercuts it. Pensions, the Netherlands is a cost nobody is talking about. And Ireland's brand new scheme means today's answer won't be true in a decade. I know this series is built up a pattern, episode of headline numbers not surviving contact with the primary source, and I want to be just as careful applying that standard to the numbers that would flatter the UK as I have been the numbers that flatter the campaign. Neither side gets a free pass just because I like the shape of the argument. Again, every source for the episode will be in the show notes, which will be on data.salonlogicpro.co.uk. Go and check them for yourself. Thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next one.